You ever look at the world and wonder if there's some kind of hidden script to all the chaos? Well, the source material we're digging into today presents exactly that, a detailed story it calls A Blueprint of Deception. It's a tale of cosmic conflict, an ancient agenda, and, ultimately, the triumph of light. So let's unpack this blueprint together and see where it takes us.
Okay, so the story kicks off with a single chilling phrase. It immediately sets the stage for what the source portrays as a kind of cosmic thriller. It basically frames our modern world as the final act in a huge battle for truth, where an ancient plan is unfolding right before our very eyes.
So this blueprint first lays out a deception, and get this, it's not some distant future event. The source claims it's a reality that's happening right now. It argues this deception is actively shaping our headlines, our entertainment, and yeah, even our laws.
At the very heart of this deception is a simple but really powerful tactic: inversion. The core idea presented is that morality gets completely flipped on its head. We're talking about a world where good is called evil, and destructive behaviors are just rebranded as liberation and progress.
To make this concrete, the source points to some specific examples of what it calls orchestrated chaos. It describes Hollywood as a glittering pulpit that often portrays faith as just madness. The text also gets into geopolitical narratives, arguing that in global conflicts, Israel is frequently cast as the aggressor, while the actions of terrorist groups are defended by intellectual elites. And the cultural impact of all this, according to the text, it's a society that's losing its moral compass.
So what's the ultimate goal of all this deception? The narrative is crystal clear: a dystopia of total control. Just imagine a world where your every move is monitored, every purchase you make is tracked, and your very survival depends on your willingness to submit to a single, all-powerful leader. Comply, or you're basically cut off from society. But hey, this deception isn't the whole story, not by a long shot. The source reveals a counter-narrative, a kind of divine timeline that's been ticking for centuries. It points to ancient prophecies, not as just vague guesses, but as a precise clock mapping out key historical events. And right at the heart of this clock is a single ancient nation: Israel. Now, this is where it gets really specific. The text points to a single number from the book of Daniel that it says is the key to unlocking this whole prophetic timeline. It's not some random figure, but a precise calculation with a world-altering conclusion. And that number is 483.
Okay, so here's how the source breaks it all down. Think of it like a countdown. The clock starts at point 1, with a decree from King Artaxerxes to go and rebuild Jerusalem. From there, point 2 shows the prophecy counting down 69 weeks of years, which on the Hebrew calendar adds up to exactly 483 years. And what happens when that clock hits 0? Point 3, the Messiah will be cut off as a sacrifice for all of humanity.
And the source really highlights the level of detail in this prophecy. It claims it didn't just pinpoint the Messiah's death, but it also foretold the destruction of Jerusalem and its temple that would happen later, an event this narrative connects directly to the historical sacking of the city by the Romans way back in 70 CE.
But that prophetic clock doesn't just stop in the past. It points forward to a future of unbelievable turmoil. A time when two key figures, as described in the book of Revelation, are set to rise to power on the world stage.
The first of these figures is known as the Beast, and he's often identified in this narrative as the ultimate Antichrist. Now, this isn't just one guy, but the personification of a final tyrannical world empire, like a monstrous fusion of all the world's most brutal regimes, empowered by dark forces and demanding absolute worship from everyone. But the Beast isn't working alone. No way. He has a powerful ally, the false prophet. This guy acts as the propaganda minister. He's described as looking gentle like a lamb, but speaking with the voice of a dragon. And his job is to perform fake miracles and trick the world's population into worshiping the beast.
So how do they achieve this total control? The source outlines a clear three-step system for global domination. First, you demand worship. Second, you enforce that demand with a mandatory mark. And third, you use that mark to control all economic activity. No mark, no access to this system. Simple as that.
And at the very heart of this whole system of control is that one infamous number, 666. Within this narrative, this number becomes the symbol of the entire apparatus. It's the mark of compliance with the beast's reign and the ultimate stamp of rebellion against God.
Okay, so we've seen the modern deception, the prophetic clock, and the dystopian system of control. But these are all just pieces of the puzzle, right? The text now asks the most crucial question of all. Who is the architect of this entire grand deception? Who is the mastermind pulling the strings of all this inversion, chaos, and control? The narrative builds to this central question, identifying a single powerful entity as the source of this whole blueprint of deception.
The source points to one powerful entity, a fallen angel whose pride led to his downfall. His name is Lucifer. And in this story, he isn't presented as just a metaphor for evil, but as the personal, intelligent architect of all this deception.
To really understand this figure's motives, the source points to his origin story. According to passages in Isaiah and Ezekiel, he started out as a magnificent angelic being, a cherub of the highest order. But he was cast from heaven for his prideful rebellion. So now, his role is that of the ancient serpent, described in Revelation, whose primary weapon is deceiving the entire world.
But look, this story does not end in darkness. The final act, as described in the text, is a story of hope, a narrative of a final, cosmic battle that's prophesied to change the course of history forever.
The key to this final victory, according to the text, is the return of Christ. The narrative draws a really sharp contrast between his first coming as a humble servant on a mission of atonement and a prophesied second coming where he returns not to save, but to rule as a victorious king on a mission of judgment.
And the final battle described, it's not some long, drawn-out war. Nope, it's a swift and definitive victory for the forces of light. The Antichrist is defeated, his political and religious system is completely dismantled, and the architect of deception himself is bound. This series of events, according to the text, is what paves the way for a brand new era of peace and justice.
The source summarizes this final victory with this single powerful statement. It's a conclusion that takes the whole story from the deepest depths of deception to the ultimate triumph of light, truth, and freedom. And so we're left with this final, thought-provoking question. In presenting such a detailed narrative of chaos and divine order, what does this blueprint from our source material really reveal about that profound human need to find meaning, justice, and a definitive victory of good over evil in a world that so often feels unpredictable?